After the ritual was done, Rita awoke in another woman's body, that of Verta Alberthart. The feeling was unsettling. She touched her face, her arms, and the silken skin that wasn't hers. The reflection in the mirror confirmed the truth. Her soul had crossed the line between life and death, into someone else's vessel. A strange mix of satisfaction and disdain flickered in her expression. "Such an awful personality," she murmured, tracing her fingers over the mirror's surface. "But an amazing body. Thank you, Verta, wherever you are." Her tone was both mocking and grateful, a contradiction that suited her perfectly. As she examined the slender figure in the mirror, Rita noticed scars on Verta's wrists, faint but unmistakable. "So you tried to escape life and even failed at that," she muttered, shaking her head. Weak. The sight stirred something bitter in her chest. Not pity, but recognition. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss, it's Ian. May I come in?" Rita froze. The name meant nothing to her, but she composed herself quickly and pulled a robe over her shoulders. "Come in." A tall man entered, the butler of the Alberthart household, judging by his manner. His eyes, however, were too sharp, too assessing for a servant's. "You look well today, miss," he said, bowing politely, though his gaze lingered. "Yes," Rita replied, imitating confidence. "Today isn't so bad." Ian smiled faintly. "I'm glad. You've seemed troubled lately." Troubled? She wondered just how miserable Verta must have been. When Ian's gaze dropped to her wrists, his calm expression fractured. "Miss, not again," he whispered, genuine worry breaking through his composure. Rita only tilted her head. His concern wasn't hers to return. As he scolded her softly, Ian mentioned something that made Rita's stomach tighten. An arranged engagement with Count Lawrence's family. "An engagement?" she echoed, trying not to sound alarmed. Apparently, Verta was to be married soon. Ian tried to reassure her that such a marriage would bring security and influence. But as Rita listened, she began to understand the hopelessness that had clung to Verta's life. A loveless engagement, a manipulative household, a butler whose loyalty seemed to blur the line between duty and desire. Verta had lived in a cage, and now Rita was locked inside it too. When Ian stepped closer, his tone lowered. "You seem different today," he observed. "Stronger, somehow." Rita forced a smile. "Maybe I've finally decided to stop being weak." He looked at her for a long time, something unreadable in his eyes. Part admiration, part warning. "Then the household will have to get used to a new mistress," he said. The tension in the air thickened. Rita realized that beneath the polished manners of this place, there was rot, secrets that Verta had barely survived. The way Ian looked at her, the way he spoke her name, it was all too familiar, too intimate. When he finally bowed and left the room, Rita exhaled slowly, her pulse racing. She turned back to the mirror and whispered, "Verta, what kind of life were you living?" Outside the door, Ian paused for a moment, his gloved hand tightening into a fist. "You've really changed, miss," he murmured to himself before walking away. Rita didn't notice. Her reflection had already begun to smile. A cold, knowing smile that didn't belong to Verta Alberthart at all. Rita awoke to an unsettling silence, her body still trembling from what had just transpired. The strange familiarity of the room clashed with the dissonance of her situation. She was no longer herself. Her reflection confirmed the impossible. She now inhabited Verta Alberthart's body. The face staring back at her was beautiful, proud, and composed. But beneath that perfection, Rita could sense the hollowness of a girl who had everything yet seemed to value nothing. She touched her lips, still warm from Ian's earlier presence. The butler's actions, his devotion, his words, his blush, were all too real, and yet utterly absurd to her. The very idea of a servant crossing such a line with the daughter of the household unsettled her. Still, in the confusion of sensations, she'd played along, unwilling to blow her cover so soon. Now, as she sat alone, the memory burned in her mind like a strange, shameful secret. Rita sank into the bathtub, the warm water doing little to calm her spiraling thoughts. "I can't tolerate this," she murmured under her breath. But she knew she had no choice. Verta's life was now hers to live, and she couldn't risk suspicion, not until she understood the world she'd stepped into. For now, she'd wear the mask perfectly, no matter how suffocating it felt. When she finally rose, she wrapped herself in a bathrobe and stood before the mirror once more. The woman reflected there wasn't Rita anymore. She was Verta Alberthart, the daughter of a powerful, noble house, someone whose words carried weight, whose every action could ripple through the family's political future. The meek, powerless girl she once was had died the moment she entered this body. As she walked through the garden, her thoughts grew heavier. In that other life, I couldn't even afford powerless malice. She plucked a rose from the bush, crushed it in her palm, and watched its petals fall. If I had ever attracted the attention of the strong, they would have crushed me too. She looked toward the grand mansion and then at the family portrait hanging in the corridor. Verta's parents, her brother, her cold smile immortalized in paint. Turning away, Rita whispered to herself, "That pitiful girl is gone. From now on, I am Verta Alberhart, the Alberharts' one and only daughter." The next morning, Rita summoned the maids. They entered the dressing chamber, arms full of gowns, their faces expectant. "Lay them out," Rita ordered. Her tone carried authority now, the kind Verta was known for. But this time, it came from true purpose, not entitlement. The dresses, lavish and ornate, filled the room with color. Rita observed them with little interest. "Who among you writes the fastest?" she asked sharply. A maid raised her hand. "You'll take notes," Rita said. "Bring parchment." When the girl returned, Rita began issuing orders with deliberate calm. "These designs are excessive. We'll make adjustments. That one, lower the neckline to here." She pointed precisely. "The back should dip lower. And remove these embellishments," she said, flicking the frills of another gown with distaste. "Keep it elegant, not gaudy." The maids exchanged uneasy glances. These were Verta's favorite styles, and her sudden shift unsettled them. When the alterations were done, Rita waved a hand dismissively. "That's enough for my wardrobe. Now, go to the city. I want every spring fashion pamphlet gathered within the week." Her voice carried an effortless command that silenced hesitation. As the maids dispersed, Rita turned to two of them. "Jana, Sonia, stay. I have another task." They followed her down the corridor, whispering between themselves, trying to guess her intention. When they reached a quiet room, Rita opened the door and gestured. "Wait here." Then she stepped inside and shut it behind her. Moments later, her shoes slipped off quietly. She tiptoed back toward the door and pressed her ear against it. She knew how servants talked. Idle chatter could reveal everything the household tried to hide. For a while, there was silence. Then Sonia spoke, her voice curious. "Why do you think Lady Verta went in there?" "Maybe she's rearranging the furniture. Count Lawrence's son is coming next week," Jana replied. "Impossible! She can't stand him," Sonia scoffed. "You think she'd do all that just for his visit?" Their conversation drew a faint smile from Rita. So Verta despised her fiance. That was useful to know. Jana's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's handsome, though. Stoic, but too reserved. And he always brings that friend of his, doesn't he?" "Yes. The one everyone says is Marquise Carter's right-hand man," Sonia added. "That's probably why the master agreed to the engagement." The mention of that name froze Rita. Marquise Carter. Her heart tightened. The Carters had been the reason her old life crumbled. The same family that turned her from Baron Wickett's daughter into a nameless waitress scraping by in taverns. Her expression hardened as the pieces fell into place. Verta's fiancé was connected to the very people who had destroyed her. The irony of it all twisted into something darkly satisfying. Leaning back from the door, Rita let out a quiet laugh. Low, bitter, almost amused. "So fate has a sense of humor," she murmured. "Magnificent, Verta. I'm truly enjoying your life." She straightened, her eyes glinting with resolve. Whatever twisted game the world had thrown her into, she would play it to the end. And this time, she would not be the one crushed beneath anyone's heel. Rita sat quietly, her thoughts tangled in the confusion of recent days. The name Carter lingered in her mind like a thorn she couldn't pull free. Why would the second son of Marquise Carter, one of the most powerful men in the region, stoop so low as to meddle in Baron Wicker's petty household affairs? She murmured to herself, her brows furrowing. He drove out the Baron's daughter, toyed with their name, and for what? Her voice trembled with restrained frustration. "I'll find out myself," she whispered, her expression hardening into resolve. "Just you wait, proud Carter. After everything you've done to ruin me, it's only right that you get a taste of your own medicine." Her maids, Jana and Sonia, glanced at one another nervously, uncertain what to make of their mistress's brooding silence. When the door opened abruptly, Both jumped, but Rita didn't flinch. "Bring out all the perfumes," she said calmly, her tone deceptively light. "Line them up on the table." To Rita, perfume was more than a fragrance. It was a weapon. Even cheap perfume made men drunk with desire when I was a barmaid. She mused inwardly. So imagine what I can do with Verta's collection. She picked up a delicate bottle, examining it against the light. Her taste in dresses was horrendous, but this girl certainly knew her scents. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Who is it?" she asked. The door opened, revealing Ian, the family's butler. His face bore that familiar look of caution as he bowed. "Miss, your fiance has arrived earlier than expected. I thought it best to inform you, as the two families' relationship must be considered," he said carefully. "Is that so? And his companion, will he be coming with him again?" Rita asked, her voice sharp. "Yes, the Baron will accompany him as usual," Ian replied. Rita tilted her head slightly. "Baron Jacquard never seems to miss a visit. Does he not tire of tagging along?" Ian hesitated, uneasy. "He's loyal to his master, miss." "Wouldn't you say that loyalty is a dangerous thing, Ian?" she pressed. He avoided her gaze. "I couldn't say, miss." And with that, he excused himself. After he left, Rita's mind raced. He was quick to mention my fiancé, yet oddly silent about the Baron. Why, she wondered. Ian, Lawrence's son, the Baron, they're all tied together somehow. And none of it feels right. The day of the meeting arrived like a storm cloud. Rita, still wearing Verta Alberhart's body, stood before a tall mirror, her black gown wrapping her in quiet confidence. The perfume she'd chosen filled the room, soft yet intoxicating. But when her eyes drifted to the faint scars on her wrists, Verta's scars, remnants of a suicide attempt, her expression soured. "To harm such a beautiful body," she murmured, touching the marks. "How foolish." "Miss," Jana said timidly from the door, "your fiancé and his guest have arrived. Shall I bring them in?" "Wait," Rita ordered, turning sharply. "Send Sana to guide them in. You stay here with me." Jana blinked, confused. "Me, miss? That wouldn't be proper?" Rita's eyes flicked toward a nearby cupboard, her expression unreadable. "Open that," she said. When the maid hesitated, Rita moved herself, pulling it open to reveal a broom and a mopstick. A cold smile touched her lips. "Miss, surely you don't mean—" "Get in," Rita said softly but firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. Jana hesitated, then obeyed, trembling as she stepped inside. Moments later, the grand doors of the Alberhart estate opened. Jean, Verta's fiancé, entered with his companion, Baron Jacquard. The maids whispered among themselves, flustered by the men's charm and presence. Jean approached Rita first, his expression filled with admiration. "Verta, my beautiful fiancé," he greeted warmly, taking her hand and pressing it to his lips. "It's been a long time, Jean," Rita replied smoothly, masking her unease. "Too long," he said with a faint smile. His manners were polished, his charm effortless. Yet there was something shallow behind his eyes. Baron Jacquard followed, bowing slightly before taking Rita's hand as well. His gaze lingered longer than it should have. "Ah, we meet again, Baron Jacquard," Rita said, her smile polite but tense. "You seem to have a great deal of free time to be always at Jean's side." He chuckled, though his eyes didn't match his tone. Rita's skin crawled beneath his stare. Something's wrong with him, she thought. Lucia, another maid, entered with a tray of refreshments. "Please take your seats," she said, gesturing politely. Jean sat opposite Rita, while the Baron took the chair beside her. The arrangement unsettled her. Why sit there, of all places, she thought, forcing a composed smile as Jean continued to smile back, eerily calm. Baron Jacquard glanced toward Jean, who gave a subtle nod. Rita caught the exchange, a ripple of unease tightening in her chest. What are they planning? She wondered. She barely had time to think before Jean spoke, his tone light but laced with suggestion. "You don't seem as uncomfortable today, Verta. Have you perhaps changed your mind?" Rita matched his gaze. "I thought it foolish to keep resisting for no reason, so I've decided to try, for now." Jean smiled. "As expected of you. Sensible as always." Rita studied him carefully. Behind his civility, she saw something darker. Lust, calculation, and perhaps disdain. He doesn't love her. He never did. She realized. Jean gave another small nod to the Baron. The air grew heavy. Before Rita could react, Baron Jacquard stood abruptly, his hand clamping down on her arm. "What?" she began, but he turned her forcefully toward him. Panic shot through her as she was pushed back against the couch. Her mind raced. What are they doing? What's happening? Stop, she cried, trying to pull away, but the Baron ignored her. Jean sat still, his expression indifferent, as though the scene before him was of no consequence. Rita's heart pounded violently in her chest as she realized the depth of the trap she'd walked into. Rita felt deeply uneasy as Baron Jacquard's behavior grew increasingly forceful, his lips pressed against hers without warning, his hands slipping where it shouldn't. Shocked, she gasped, trying to push him away. Don't touch me, she said firmly, but he ignored her plea, his actions growing rougher, his breath heavy with desire. The situation spiraled beyond her control until she shoved him back, panting in frustration and fear. Jacquard only smirked and licked his finger, a vulgar display that made her stomach turn. Across the room, Jean watched with unsettling fascination. How does it feel to be kissed and caressed in front of your fiancé, Verta? He asked, his tone laced with cruelty. His eyes gleamed with perverse interest, and the sight sickened Rita. Inside, her anger burned. How does it feel? It feels like hell, you disgusting bastard, Jean continued to speak, his words twisting the air. Your pale body, trapped beneath Jacquard's, is a beautiful sight, like a demon defiling an angel. His voice trembled slightly, betraying a dark thrill. Rita glared at him. No wonder Verta hated you, she thought bitterly. When Jean began to speak again, outlining whatever twisted next step he had in mind, Rita cut him off sharply. I've had enough. I said stop. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. She tried to reason, claiming she wanted to take things slowly, to regain control. But Jean dismissed her words entirely. His expression darkened as he hinted that Ian, her loyal attendant, had been a part of his manipulative plans. You haven't slept with that man, have you? He asked coldly. I thought he'd be useful, but it seems I overestimated him. The revelation hit Rita like a slap. Shock gave way to disgust, then fury. The man she was meant to marry spoke as though her life and dignity were mere props in his games. After I told him I wanted to see your purity taken on our wedding night, Jean muttered, his face twisting with frustration. That was the moment Rita decided she wouldn't let him, or anyone, control her again. She rose to her feet, her voice cutting through the tension. I'm done! I won't play your games anymore. Jean's calm cracked. This is what happens when trust breaks, he said icily. Now I have to question everything. No more pretending to be kind. With that, he ordered Baron Jacquard to continue his assault. Rita's pulse quickened as Jacquard approached again. Stay back, she warned, her voice trembling but firm. He didn't listen. When she threatened to scream, he seized her face and pressed her against the wall. Just as despair began to take hold, a sharp voice rang out. Take your filthy hands off her. Now! Everyone froze. Jana, a maid, stood in the doorway wielding a mop like a weapon. Her eyes blazed with fury as she faced the Baron. How dare you threaten Miss Alberthart in her own home, she shouted. You call yourselves gentlemen? Jacquard stepped back, momentarily stunned. Rita blinked in disbelief. Holy hell, she's incredible. Jean's expression soured. The interruption ruined his act of control. He forced a cold smile, pretending to regret the scene. It seems we've gone too far, he said curtly before leaving with Jacquard, both men visibly displeased. When they were gone, Rita collapsed onto the couch, relief flooding through her shaking limbs. Jana, still clutching the mop, looked uncertain. I'm sorry, miss. I might have made things worse. But Rita shook her head, her voice soft but steady. No, Jana, you did exactly what you should have done. Then, after a pause, she added, Go fetch Ian. I need to speak with him. As Jana hurried away, she fought back tears, fearing her interference might cost her job. When she returned with Ian, her eyes were red. Rita turned toward him, her tone brisk. Triple her pay, she said. Ian bowed silently and obeyed. Then Rita added, From now on, Jana will be my personal maid. Jana's mouth fell open. Miss, I'm just a commoner. I can't. You can. Rita interrupted firmly. And you will. Jana nodded, overwhelmed, and left the room quietly. Once alone, Rita faced Ian. Her calm exterior gave way to anger. You've been awfully close with my fiancé lately, she said, her voice low. Tell me, are you part of his schemes too? Ian hesitated, feigning confusion, but Rita wasn't fooled. In one swift motion, she grabbed his shirt and tore it open, the buttons scattering to the floor. Don't play dumb, she said coldly. You know exactly what happened here. So tell me, what did you see? What did you do? Ian's face flushed as her hand brushed against his chest, but Rita wasn't teasing. She was testing him, forcing him to confront the reality of what had just transpired. Her expression was fierce, her gaze unwavering. She refused to be a victim any longer. Not to Jean, not to Jacquard, and not to anyone pretending to serve her while plotting behind her back. The air between them was heavy with unspoken tension. But beneath it all, Rita's resolve had hardened. Whatever game these men were playing, she was done being their pawn. Ian sat in silence, a faint tremor running through his body as he locked eyes with Rita. Her voice was calm, but carried a sharp edge as she recounted the night's events. Her hand, cold and deliberate, rested against his chest. She traced slow circles before giving his skin a teasing pinch that made him flinch. "I shared a moment with Baron Jacquard in this room," she began, her words measured but heavy. "He was assertive, perhaps too assertive. His hands roamed where they shouldn't have, over my chest without restraint." Her gaze hardened as she spoke, watching Ian's reaction closely. "And then, young Lawrence's son. He had the nerve to make a proposition," she added, leaning closer until their breaths mingled. Her fingers tightened briefly on his chest, and Ian let out a startled sound. "He said if I changed my mind, we could all share in the pleasure together." Rita's tone shifted, cold and accusing. "Tell me, Ian," she whispered, hands slipping around his neck, her eyes narrowing. "Did he make you such a promise?" She tightened her grip briefly, forcing him to meet her gaze before releasing him just as suddenly. Ian's expression flickered with confusion and denial. I don't know what you mean, miss," he stammered. "That's why you kept saying my fiance's name," she snapped, her voice rising, "while you were helping yourself to my body." Ian looked away, his voice faltering. "Miss, among noble families, such things aren't unusual. Affairs happen. Many couples." "Enough," Rita interrupted sharply. "Shut your mouth." Her fury was sharp and immediate. "Don't ever show yourself before me again. Do you understand?" Ian, visibly shaken but defiant, muttered, "I cannot obey that. You are not my employer, miss." Her hand came down fast, a sharp slap that echoed through the room. Without another word, she turned her back on him, her expression cold as marble. The following morning, as sunlight poured through the lace curtains, Rita sat quietly over tea. The faint bruise marks on her arm, the Baron's doing, stared back at her, each one a reminder. Those fools, she thought bitterly. How can I make them regret ever crossing me? She considered her options carefully. Should I seek Count Alberhardt's help? No. He's the one who arranged the marriage in the first place. He wouldn't dare lift a finger. Her thoughts swirled between anger and calculation when Jana's voice broke through. "Miss, the fortune teller you mentioned before, he's here." Rita's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Is that so? Then show him to the sitting room. And," she paused, eyes glinting with mischief, "make sure Ian escorts him." A short while later, as she made her way down the corridor, Ian appeared, blocking her path. "What are you doing here, Ian?" she asked, tilting her head. "Miss, who is in that room?" He pressed, his tone oddly stern. "That's none of your concern," Rita said, smiling faintly. "Miss," he began, his voice uncertain, his hand half extended toward her. "Don't be so serious," she teased. "It's only a joke. I'll explain later." Before he could respond, Jana hurried in, breathless. "Sir, the gardener is looking for you. It's urgent." Rita took the opportunity to dismiss him. "Go, see to it," she said sweetly. Ian hesitated but obeyed, glancing back as he walked away. Rita's smile lingered, sharp and cunning. Why has she changed so much, he wondered silently. It's not like her at all. Inside the sitting room, the so-called fortune teller awaited her. He bowed politely. "A pleasure to meet you, miss." Rita laughed softly, her expression mocking. "A pleasure, you say? How very proper of you." She waved a hand. "Drop the act. No one's around." The figure pulled back his hood, revealing familiar features. "How's the new body treating you, Rita?" he asked with a smirk. "She's perfect," Rita replied smoothly. "Beautiful, wealthy, and healthy. What could I possibly complain about?" "The forbidden magic took better than expected," he observed. "Perhaps because she was already suicidal." Rita chuckled quietly. "You've always had a talent for understatement, Yersha." Yersha, the fortune teller's true identity, nodded once. "It was a fair exchange. I don't require thanks." Rita leaned forward slightly. "Then your visit means only one thing, doesn't it?" "Yes," Yersha said simply. "She died yesterday." Rita's eyes flickered with dark satisfaction. Is that so? She whispered, a smile spreading across her face. You remember our deal? Yersha reminded her. Of course, Rita answered softly. Tell me what you need and I'll see it done. Not yet, he replied, his tone unreadable. Later that day, Rita set out to confirm the news herself. Inside her carriage, she gazed at her reflection in a small hand mirror. A single tear slipped down her cheek, though whether from joy or relief, even she couldn't tell. Still beautiful, she murmured before snapping the mirror shut. At the morgue, the air was thick with disinfectant and decay. An attendant led her in, voice hushed. She passed 2 days ago in the early hours. Poor girl. Rita covered her nose as the sheet was lifted from the lifeless form, her former body. How tragic, the attendant sighed, so young. Rita forced a sob, feigning sorrow. My dear friend, such a loss, she said, though her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Inside, her thoughts whispered, yes, that's my body. She placed a delicate hand on the cold cheek of her former self, her lips curling into a faint, victorious smile.
Thank you for watching this episode of our Manhwa Recap. We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of this story with us. If you loved the content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more amazing manhwa recaps. See you in the next episode.